My grandpa and his 7 other brothers and sisters were all born in Fiji. Their father, my great-grandfather, had come to Fiji from Punjab, India after returning from World War I. My great-grandfather joined the British Army and fought in World War I at 15 to earn money for his poverty-stricken family. Upon returning home from the war, he realized that India could no longer compare to the outside world he had seen during World War I, so he boarded a British ship bound for the place that his children would soon call home, Fiji. Only returning to India to marry my great-grandmother, he stayed in Fiji, had 8 children, and opened a store called PSB Singh and Company. My grandpa, the oldest of the 8 children, grew up enjoying Fiji with nothing to complain about. He eventually took over his father's store, married my grandma, and had a son. Nevertheless, happiness is temporary. My grandparents had a second child. However, he died shortly after his birth. After desperate attempts to assuage my grandma's grief, my grandpa realized that the only way to help her was to send her back to India to be with her parents. Soon after this loss, my grandpa's store burned down. My grandpa's life of bliss was turning into a nightmare. With nothing left for him in Fiji, my grandpa decided to go to India to be with his wife and try his hand at farming. However, soon after my grandpa arrived to India, he became extremely ill, which left him unable to farm and support his family. When his health began to improve, he was once again separated from his wife, who was now pregnant with my mother. He boarded a plane to England, where he found a job as a busboy. After working long hours, my grandpa made enough money to bring his family to England. When he was reunited with his family, he was overwhelmed with joy as he held his 8-month-old daughter, my mother, for the first time. Although the family was now reunited, they still faced the rigid hardships of an immigrant family. Eventually, my grandpa got promoted. The family was pleased, but something else was bothering all of them. My grandpa and his children's asthma was becoming severe. After his sister told him that the family's health would be better in America, my grandpa made his way to California by himself to set a foundation for his family. As time progressed, my grandpa's lonesomeness worsened. Only after a few months he returned to England to see his wife and 3 kids and bring them to California with him. In 1973, the family sold their home and all of their belongings and set off to California with only a few suitcases. When they got to California, the family of 5 was crammed into only one room of my grandpa's sister's home in Daly City. My grandparents were determined to succeed in California and finally find a permanent home for their children, so my grandpa got a job as a baker while my grandma began work as a maid. Things were moving in the right direction. Soon enough, they moved out into their own home in South San Francisco. My grandpa continued to work as a baker until the family sold their home and moved to Sacramento to run a small grocery store. After 3 difficult and unsuccessful years in Sacramento, the family bought a small store in San Bruno and called it Fiji Market. They lived above Fiji Market and watched their business flourish until my grandparents' retirement in 1999. By this time, my mother and her 2 brothers were all far more successful in life, married with their own families. My grandparents felt like they had succeeded in what they had set out to do, make life better for their children. Through my grandparents' accomplishments, I have learned not to let failure scare me out of taking risks, because even though I may face failure, it's better than living a life without victory or defeat.